Welcome to another Tempo Storm Meta Snapshot breakdown. The Hearthstone meta is in flux following the recent set of balance changes, with the nerf to Prince Renathal changing the game drastically. While some decks continue to make use of Renathal, the 5 less initial health has drastically lowered their power level and allowed for multiple new decks to form in the meta. Many players are still up in arms about the rise of Rogue, and others have taken to calling for Prince Renathal to be unnerfed. Blizzard has said that they have a spicy balance patch lined up for the end of the month, so players are eager to see what is in store. Before we dive into the meta snapshot, we want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be kept up to date with all of our content. Now let's dive right in. Leading off tier 1 this time around is Miracle Rogue. While this archetype saw itself nerfed along with the other tier 1 deck, Quest Spell Demon Hunter, it was evidently not enough to keep the deck down. In fact, thanks to the meta shift that followed the balance change, both are as dominant as ever. Miracle Rogue continues to do crazy things, spending the early turns cycling and playing cards, developing large threats with things like Sinister Graveyard, then finishing the game with those massive threats. This deck boasts even to good matchups against every deck in tier 1 and tier 2. Just try to avoid Quest Spell Demon Hunter and Frost Death Knight if possible, as their ability to stall puts up the best fight against your game plan. The next and only other deck making an appearance in tier 1 is Quest Spell Demon Hunter. Only 2 decks again? Yep, and the gap between tier 1 and tier 2 is pretty immense. With Quest Spell Demon Hunter, spend the early turns developing the quest and cycling, then use your discounted cards to push a massive amount of damage. Whenever your opponent summons mid to large-sized threats, put on the pressure with Sinful Brand. Honestly, this deck can be infuriating to play against, but it's really fun to pilot. There's something about dealing this much damage from hand that's almost therapeutic. You can dominate Shockspitter Hunter, but you'll find yourself struggling with Bless Priest. Now that we've covered the entirety of tier 1, let's dive into the top 3 decks in the second tier. Before we do, we want to remind you to check out the full report over at tempostorm.com for a more in-depth analysis of the rest of the meta report. Now let's get to it. At the forefront of tier 2 is another rogue archetype, Thief Rogue. This archetype continues to play the same game plan that it was previously known for, spending the early turns role-playing as a different hero, then using the Thief effects to play a discounted null. This allows players to easily contest board, and thanks to the random nature of the deck, there's a new experience every time. Thief Rogue has had a very balanced set of matchups, as most games come down to the card generation you're dealt. You can usually take care of Bless Priest pretty easily, but look out for Shockspitter Hunter and Quest Spell Demon Hunter. The next deck making an appearance in tier 2 is Evolve Shaman. This deck seems to make a reappearance in the meta every few months. With cards like Convincing Disguise, Muck Pools, and Primordial Wave, you can make huge threats out of seemingly nothing. Evolve Shaman has an interesting spread of matchups, and much like Thief Rogue, it can scam wins out of nowhere. Bless Priest falls easily to your plan, as you can devolve their threats and stick a wide board. But look out for Miracle Rogue, as it can be hard to interact with their early stealthed board. The last deck that we're looking at today is the previously mentioned Bless Priest. Balance changes have taken this archetype down a couple notches from its peak, but it is still a very viable choice. Players are a bit hesitant to play nerfed archetypes, so its play rate isn't the best. We promise that it's still good, it just requires more patience. Its best matchups come from slower archetypes such as Skeleton Mage and Frost Death Knight, as they can't really interact with your large threats quickly enough. But your bad matchups got a lot worse with the nerfs, so try to avoid Evolve Shaman and Rogue. The recent balance changes have affected the game quite noticeably, and with the upcoming unannounced changes set to happen by the end of the month, we're very eager to see where the standard meta ends up. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the standard meta. If you did, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more Hearthstone content. We'll see you next time.